I was celebrating what I thought would be a perfect birthday with my family when a stranger's desperate warning shattered my world forever. 3 words scrawled on a crumpled napkin: "She's killing you." What happened in the next 5 minutes would expose a web of deception so sinister it would make you question everyone you trust. My name is Margaret Davidson, and I'm 64 years old. The night that was supposed to celebrate another year of life nearly became the night I lost everything, including my sanity, my fortune, and ultimately, my life itself. It was a crisp October evening in downtown Seattle when my son Jonathan led me into Romano's, the upscale Italian bistro where we'd celebrated every milestone for the past decade. The warm amber lighting cast dancing shadows across cream-colored walls adorned with vintage photographs of the Italian countryside. The familiar scent of fresh basil and roasted garlic should have comforted me, but something felt wrong. Terribly wrong. Catherine, my daughter-in-law, glided behind us in her designer black dress, her smile perfectly practiced, her eyes calculating in a way I'd grown to recognize but never understand. She'd been part of our family for 3 years now, ever since she'd swept Jonathan off his feet with her charm and devastating beauty. Tonight, however, her presence felt different. Predatory. "Happy birthday, Mother Margaret," she cooed, her voice honey-sweet as she kissed my cheek. Her lips were ice-cold despite the restaurant's warmth. "You look absolutely radiant for someone your age." The phrase hung in the air like poison. For someone your age. She'd been saying things like that more frequently lately, little barbs wrapped in compliments, designed to remind me that I was getting older, more vulnerable, more expendable. Jonathan beamed as he pulled out my chair at our usual corner table, the one with the perfect view of Elliott Bay. "Mom, you really do look incredible tonight. That new medication Dr. Peterson prescribed must be working wonders." My blood ran cold. "What medication?" I'd been to see Dr. Peterson 3 weeks ago for a routine checkup, but he hadn't prescribed anything new. Yet over the past few weeks, Catherine had been bringing me small white pills with my morning tea, claiming they were vitamins to help with your energy levels. I'd taken them without question, trusting her completely. After all, she was a registered nurse. She understood these things better than I did. But now, sitting in the flickering candlelight, I realized I'd been incredibly naive. "The sommelier has selected a special vintage for tonight," Catherine announced, her eyes glittering with an excitement that made my skin crawl. "A 2018 Barolo. Your absolute favorite, isn't it, Mother Margaret?" She emphasized the word mother like it tasted bitter in her mouth. I watched as she signaled the waiter, who approached with a wine bottle that looked far more expensive than anything we usually ordered. The ritual of opening, tasting, and pouring seemed to take forever, but Catherine watched every drop with laser-sharp focus. That's when I noticed her purse. It was positioned at an odd angle on the table, partially open, and I could see the corner of what looked like a small plastic vial inside. The same type of vial I'd seen in her nursing supplies at home. To Margaret, Jonathan raised his glass, his face glowing with genuine love and affection. "To the strongest woman I know, who taught me everything about resilience, about fighting for what's right, about never giving up." Catherine raised her glass too, but something flickered across her face, a micro-expression of rage so intense it made me dizzy. It was gone in an instant, replaced by her practiced smile, but I'd seen it. Pure, undiluted hatred. "Yes," she said softly, to Margaret. "May this birthday be unforgettable." The way she said unforgettable sent shivers down my spine. There was a finality to it, like she was delivering a eulogy rather than a toast. I was about to raise my glass when I felt someone brush against my chair. One of the restaurant's servers, a young woman with kind eyes and calloused hands that spoke of hard work, was collecting empty bread plates from nearby tables. As she reached across our table, she stumbled slightly, deliberately I realized later, and dropped her cleaning cloth. As she bent to retrieve it, she pressed something small and warm into my palm. Our eyes met for just a fraction of a second, and I saw something there that terrified me, urgent, desperate fear. "Excuse me, ma'am," she whispered so quietly I barely heard her. So sorry for the interruption. Then she was gone, weaving between tables toward the kitchen. In my palm was a small piece of paper, folded so tightly it was barely visible. My heart hammered against my ribs as I carefully unfolded it beneath the table, my hands shaking so badly I could hardly read the hasty scrawl. Don't drink the wine. She put something in it while you were looking at the menu. Get up and go to the restroom now. I'll meet you there. Your life depends on it. Emma, the restaurant seemed to tilt around me. The gentle murmur of conversation became a roar in my ears, and the warm lighting suddenly felt harsh and exposing. I looked at Catherine, who was watching me with the intensity of a hawk studying its prey. Are you feeling all right, Mother Margaret? She asked, her voice dripping with false concern. You look a bit pale. I'm fine, I managed to croak, though I felt anything but fine. Just need to freshen up for a moment. As I stood on trembling legs, I caught sight of my wine glass. The liquid inside was a beautiful deep red, but now it looked sinister, like blood waiting to claim its victim. I noticed something else. Tiny bubbles along the rim where there should be none in a still wine. Evidence of something dissolving. Don't be long, Catherine called after me, her voice carrying an edge that made my skin crawl. We have such wonderful surprises planned for tonight. The word surprises hit me like a physical blow. What kind of surprises? I stumbled toward the restroom, my legs feeling like they might give out at any moment. The restroom was empty except for Emma, the server who had passed me the note. She was pacing like a caged animal, her face etched with anxiety and determination. Thank God you came, she breathed, grabbing my shoulders. Mrs. Davidson, I need you to listen to me very carefully. Your daughter-in-law has been slowly poisoning you for months. The words hit me like a physical blow. That's impossible, I whispered. But even as I said it, pieces began falling into place. The increasing fatigue, the moments of confusion I'd attributed to aging, the subtle memory lapses that had been getting worse. My grandmother went through the same thing, Emma continued, her voice urgent. The same woman who's sitting at your table right now. Catherine Morrison, that's her real name, not Catherine Davidson. She worked as a home health aide for my grandmother 2 years ago. Convinced the family that Grandma Rose needed specialized care, needed her medications adjusted constantly. My legs gave out, and I sank onto one of the velvet chairs near the mirror. Your grandmother? What happened to her? Emma's face crumpled with grief and rage. She died of what the doctors called natural causes, heart failure brought on by medication complications. But I knew something was wrong. Grandma Rose was healthy as a horse until Catherine showed up. Within 6 months, she was confused, frail, completely dependent on Catherine for everything. But why would she? I couldn't finish the question. Money, Emma said simply. Grandma Rose changed her will 2 weeks before she died. Left everything to the caring nurse who made her final months bearable. $500,000 plus her house. The room spun around me. But Catherine's married to my son. She doesn't need to. Mrs. Davidson, I've been watching you both for weeks. I got a job here specifically because I knew she'd bring you eventually. She's not just after your money. She's systematically destroying your credibility so she can have you declared incompetent. My mind raced back over the past few months. The subtle suggestions that I was becoming forgetful. The times Catherine had corrected me when I told stories, making me doubt my own memory. The way she'd started accompanying me to all my doctor's appointments, speaking for me, describing symptoms I didn't remember having. She's been gaslighting you, Emma continued, making your son believe you're declining mentally while she slowly kills you with medications. Once you're out of the picture, she'll have access to your entire estate through Jonathan. But Jonathan would never. Jonathan doesn't know. He loves you both, and she's using that against him. She's been documenting every confused moment, every time you've seemed disoriented after taking those vitamins she gives you. Building a case for incompetency. The full horror of the situation crashed over me like a tidal wave. Catherine hadn't just planned to murder me tonight. She'd been orchestrating my destruction for months, maybe years. Every kind gesture, every moment of seeming care, had been calculated moves in a deadly game. What's in the wine? I asked, though I wasn't sure I wanted to know. Emma pulled out her phone and showed me a photo. I managed to get a picture of the vial she used. It looks like digitalis, a heart medication that's lethal in high doses. Combined with whatever she's been giving you in those daily pills, it would cause massive cardiac arrest. The perfect crime. An elderly woman with a weak heart succumbing to natural causes. But I didn't have a weak heart. My last cardiac exam had been perfect, unless she's been telling people I have heart problems. Emma nodded grimly. I overheard her talking to the insurance agent last week, discussing your recent cardiac episodes and how concerned the family was about your declining health. Insurance. Of course. Catherine had been positioning herself to collect not just my inheritance, but life insurance payouts as well. The scope of her deception was breathtaking in its calculated cruelty. We need to call the police, I said. But Emma shook her head. With what proof? She's been too careful, too clever. By the time they could investigate, it would be too late. That wine is sitting on your table right now, and if you don't drink it soon, she'll get suspicious. So what do I do? Emma's eyes gleamed with determination. We're going to give her exactly what she wants, and catch her in the act. The plan Emma outlined was terrifying in its simplicity. I would return to the table and, in full view of the entire restaurant, switch my wine glass with Catherine's when she was distracted. Emma would be recording everything from across the restaurant with her phone, capturing Catherine's reaction when she realized what had happened. If she's poisoned the wine, she'll panic when she realizes she might drink it herself, Emma explained. That panic will be caught on camera, and it will be all the evidence we need. But what if she doesn't panic? What if she's willing to drink it to avoid suspicion? Emma's face was grim. Then we'll know for certain that she's a psychopath who's willing to die to commit the perfect murder. Either way, we'll have our answer. I stared at my reflection in the mirror. The woman looking back at me was pale, frightened, but there was something else in her eyes, a determination I hadn't seen in months. Catherine had been slowly stealing my strength, my confidence, my very sense of self. But she'd made one crucial mistake. She'd underestimated the will to survive. All right, I said, standing up straighter. Let's do it. Emma handed me a small device that looked like a button. This is connected to my phone. If anything goes wrong, press it and I'll create a scene to distract her. Whatever happens, don't let her know you suspect anything until we have it all recorded. My hands were steady as I took the device. For the first time in months, I felt like myself again. Strong, capable, dangerous. I walked back to our table with purpose, my mind crystal clear despite the medication Catherine had been feeding me. Jonathan looked up with his characteristic warm smile, but Catherine's eyes were sharp, calculating. Everything all right, Mother Margaret? Catherine asked, but I heard the suspicion beneath the concern. Perfect, I replied. And for the first time in months, I meant it. The wine glass sat exactly where I'd left it, the dark liquid seeming to pulse with malevolent intent. Catherine kept glancing at it, then at me, her fingers drumming nervously on the table. The food should be here soon, Jonathan said, consulting his watch. I'm starving. Aren't you going to finish your wine, Mother Margaret? Catherine asked, her voice carrying a slight edge. It's such a lovely vintage. It would be a shame to let it go to waste. Of course, I said, reaching for the glass. But instead of lifting it to my lips, I knocked over the salt shaker, accidentally on purpose. Oh, how clumsy of me! As both Jonathan and Catherine reflexively reached to help clean up the spilled salt, I made my move. In one fluid motion, I switched our wine glasses, grateful for years of hosting dinner parties that had taught me how to handle table settings gracefully, even under pressure. There, I said, settling back in my chair. No harm done. Catherine's glass, now mine, sat innocuously before me. Her glass, the poisoned one, was now at her place setting. I watched her face carefully, looking for any sign of recognition or panic. At first, nothing. Then, as she reached for her wine glass to take a sip, something flickered across her features. A microsecond of confusion, followed by what I could only describe as terror. Actually, she said, pushing the glass away slightly, I think I'm developing a headache. Maybe I shouldn't drink anymore tonight. Bingo. Oh, that's a shame, I said innocently. You were so excited about this particular bottle. You said it was my absolute favorite. Jonathan looked concerned. Catherine, honey, are you feeling all right? You've seemed a bit tense all evening. I'm fine, she snapped, then immediately softened her tone. Just tired from planning this lovely evening for your mother. But she kept staring at the wine glass like it might explode at any moment. Sweat had broken out on her forehead, and her hands were trembling slightly. You know what? I said, standing up suddenly. I think I need some fresh air. Jonathan, would you mind walking me outside for just a moment? Catherine's head snapped up. But the food will be here any minute. And you haven't finished your wine. There it was, the desperation. She needed me to drink that poison, and she needed it to happen tonight. Whatever timeline she was working on, it was critical that I die at this dinner, in this public place, with witnesses who would remember a lovely family birthday celebration cut tragically short by an elderly woman's sudden heart attack. The wine will keep, I said calmly. I just need a moment of fresh air. Jonathan, ever the dutiful son, immediately stood to accompany me. But Catherine's reaction was explosive. She can't leave, she said, then caught herself. I mean, the surprise. We haven't given her the birthday surprise yet. Her mask was slipping. The careful, caring daughter-in-law facade was cracking under pressure, and underneath was something cold and desperate. What surprise? Jonathan asked, looking genuinely confused. Catherine fumbled in her purse, pulling out a small wrapped box. I got you something special, Mother Margaret. Something I thought you'd really appreciate. I opened the box with trembling fingers. Inside was a beautiful gold locket, antique and delicate. But as I lifted it out, I noticed something chilling. It was already engraved. Margaret Davidson, beloved mother, 1959-2023. My death date. She'd already had my death date engraved. Jonathan was oblivious, beaming at what he saw as his wife's thoughtfulness. Oh, Catherine, that's beautiful. Mom, look at the detail work. But I was staring at Catherine and she was staring back at me. In that moment, we both knew that the game was up. She knew that I knew. It's lovely, I managed to say, my voice steady despite the hurricane of emotions inside me. Though the date seems a bit premature, Catherine's eyes widened almost imperceptibly. She'd made a mistake and she knew it. I had them put this year because I thought it would be nice to commemorate this birthday specifically. The year we became so close. But her explanation sounded hollow even to Jonathan, who was frowning at the locket with growing confusion. Wait, he said slowly. Why would you put 2023 on a locket in 2023? That doesn't make sense unless... I watched as the realization dawned on my son's face. The color drained from his features as he understood what he was seeing. Catherine, he said, his voice barely a whisper. What does this mean? Catherine's composure finally shattered completely. I can explain, she said, but her voice was high and desperate. It's not what it looks like. I just thought, I wanted... She was frantically reaching for something in her purse when Emma appeared beside our table, her phone held high and recording. Mrs. Davidson? Emma said clearly, her voice carrying across the restaurant. I have everything we need. The video of her switching the glasses earlier, the recording of her reaction when she realized she'd have to drink the poisoned wine herself, and now this, a locket with your death date already engraved. The restaurant had gone completely quiet. Every eye was on our table, every ear straining to hear what was happening. Catherine lunged for Emma's phone, but Jonathan caught her wrist. What is she talking about? He demanded. What poisoned wine? What's going on? Your wife has been slowly poisoning your mother for months, Emma said, her voice ringing with righteous anger. She killed my grandmother the same way 2 years ago. She's a serial killer who targets elderly women for their money. The words hung in the air like a death sentence. Catherine looked around the restaurant at all the staring faces, at the phone recording her every expression, at the wine glass she couldn't bear to touch, and finally at her husband's face filled with horror and disbelief. Jonathan, she whispered. "You have to believe me. I would never—" But he was already pulling out his phone, dialing 911 with shaking fingers. That's when Catherine made her final, desperate play. She grabbed for the wine glass, the poisoned one, as if she planned to drink it herself, perhaps to prove her innocence, or perhaps to end everything on her own terms. But I was faster. I knocked the glass from her hand, sending it crashing to the floor in a shower of red liquid and crystal shards. The sound echoed through the restaurant like a gunshot. "No," I said firmly. "You don't get to die and leave us with questions. You're going to face what you've done." Catherine collapsed into her chair, the fight going out of her all at once. She sat there staring at the spilled wine as police sirens grew louder in the distance. "Why?" Jonathan asked, his voice breaking. "Mom, why would she—" I looked at my son, this good man who had married a monster without knowing it, and felt my heart break for him. "Money," I said simply. It's always about money with people like her. But even as I said it, I knew it was more than that. Catherine hadn't just wanted my money. She'd wanted to destroy me completely. To steal not just my wealth, but my dignity, my relationships, my very identity. She'd wanted to erase me so thoroughly that no one would even mourn my passing. The police arrived within minutes, followed by paramedics who immediately began testing the spilled wine. Emma provided them with her recordings. I showed them the locket with the death date, and slowly, the full scope of Catherine's plan became clear. She'd been using her medical knowledge to slowly poison me with heart medication, creating the symptoms of cardiac disease while documenting my apparent mental decline. Tonight was supposed to be the grand finale, a fatal dose delivered in full view of witnesses who would remember only a lovely family dinner, tragically cut short. The locket was meant to be found later, a touching memorial that would reinforce the narrative of a loving daughter-in-law who had sensed her mother-in-law's time was running short. As they led Catherine away in handcuffs, she looked back at me one last time. The mask was completely gone now, and what I saw in her eyes was pure, unfiltered hatred. "You stupid old bitch," she hissed. "You have no idea what you've cost me." Even in defeat, she couldn't pretend to be human. She could only rage that her prey had escaped. Over the next several weeks, the full extent of Catherine's crimes came to light. Emma's grandmother, Rose, had indeed been her first victim, but there were others. 3 elderly women over 5 years, all of whom had died under Catherine's care, all of whom had mysteriously changed their wills shortly before their deaths. The police found detailed records in Catherine's apartment, notes on her victims' daily routines, copies of their financial documents, research on various medications and their lethal dosages. She'd been operating like a predator, identifying vulnerable elderly women and insinuating herself into their lives before slowly destroying them from within. The medication analysis from the spilled wine showed enough digitalis to kill a horse. Combined with the cardiac medication she'd been giving me daily in those vitamin pills, it would have caused a massive heart attack within minutes of consumption. Catherine had planned it perfectly. Or so she thought. The loving family dinner, the birthday celebration, the sudden tragic loss. Jonathan would have been devastated but unsuspicious, and Catherine would have comforted him through his grief while quietly liquidating my assets. But she'd made one crucial error. She'd underestimated the determination of a grieving granddaughter who refused to let her grandmother's murder go unsolved. Emma had spent 2 years tracking Catherine, learning her patterns, waiting for the right moment to strike. She'd gotten a job at Romano's specifically because she knew Catherine would eventually bring me there for some special occasion. Catherine was a creature of habit who liked to repeat successful patterns. The trial was a media sensation. Catherine's lawyer tried to paint her as a caring nurse who had simply gotten too emotionally involved with her patients, but the evidence was overwhelming. The recordings Emma had made, the locket with the pre-engraved death date, the medical examiner's testimony about the poison in the wine, it all painted a picture of a calculating serial killer who had turned murder into a profit-driven enterprise. Catherine was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. During her victim impact statement, Emma spoke about her grandmother Rose, a vibrant, independent woman who had been reduced to a confused, frightened shell before finally dying alone in a hospital bed. When it was my turn to speak, I looked directly at Catherine and said, "You tried to steal more than my money or my life. You tried to steal my dignity, my relationships, my very sense of self. But you failed. I'm still here, I'm still strong, and I'll spend the rest of my life making sure no other family goes through what we've endured." Catherine showed no remorse throughout the entire trial. Even when faced with overwhelming evidence of her crimes, she maintained that she'd been providing mercy to elderly people who were going to die anyway. In her twisted mind, she was the hero of her own story. The psychological evaluation revealed what many of us had already suspected. Catherine was a textbook psychopath with no capacity for empathy or genuine human connection. Every relationship in her life had been transactional, every emotion carefully calculated for maximum effect. Jonathan struggled the most with the aftermath. The guilt of having brought a killer into our family, of having believed her lies about my declining mental state, nearly destroyed him. We spent months in therapy together, working through the trauma and rebuilding our relationship. How did I not see it? He asked me during one particularly difficult session. How could I have lived with her for 3 years and not known what she was? Because she was an expert, I replied. This wasn't some crime of passion. It was a carefully planned campaign of psychological warfare designed to fool everyone, including the authorities. You saw what she wanted you to see because she was very, very good at her job. Emma and I formed an unlikely friendship born from shared trauma and mutual respect. She'd risked everything to save my life, and I was determined to honor that sacrifice by helping other elderly people avoid similar fates. Together, we created the Rose Washington Foundation, named after Emma's grandmother, dedicated to educating families about elder abuse and providing resources for those who suspect they're loved ones are being targeted by financial predators. The Foundation's work has led to the identification and prosecution of 6 other cases of systematic elder abuse in the Seattle area alone. Each successful conviction feels like a victory not just for justice, but for Rose, for all of Catherine's victims, and for every vulnerable elderly person who might otherwise fall prey to such predators. I'm 65 now, a full year older, and infinitely wiser. I've learned to trust my instincts, to question seemingly caring gestures that feel somehow wrong, and to never assume that someone's professional credentials automatically make them trustworthy. Most importantly, I've learned that survival isn't just about staying alive. It's about refusing to let evil people steal your sense of self, your relationships, or your hope for the future. Catherine is serving her sentence at the Washington Corrections Center for Women, where she'll spend the rest of her life surrounded by concrete walls and steel bars. Sometimes I wonder if she ever thinks about her victims, if she ever feels any remorse for the pain she caused. But then I remember the look in her eyes when they led her away. Pure rage that her plan had been thwarted, with no hint of regret for the lives she'd destroyed. Some people are simply born without the capacity for human compassion, and Catherine was one of them. Jonathan has slowly rebuilt his life, though he remains cautious about new relationships. He's in therapy, working through the trauma of having been unknowingly married to a serial killer, and he's become an advocate for elder abuse prevention. "Mom," he told me recently, "I'm never going to stop feeling guilty about what happened. But I'm also never going to stop being grateful that you survived it. Catherine tried to destroy our family, but instead she made us stronger." He's right. The experience was horrific, but it also taught us both valuable lessons about the importance of paying attention to our instincts, of questioning convenient explanations, and of never taking for granted the people we love. Emma is finishing her nursing degree and plans to specialize in geriatric care, determined to be the kind of advocate for elderly patients that her grandmother needed but never had. She says she wants to be the person who asks the hard questions, who notices when something doesn't seem right, who refuses to let potential victims suffer in silence. Every day, I wake up grateful to be alive, grateful to have my mental faculties intact, grateful for the second chance that Emma's courage gave me. I spend my mornings working in my garden, my afternoons volunteering with the foundation, and my evenings having dinner with Jonathan or friends or anyone else who appreciates the simple miracle of being able to share a meal without fear. Sometimes, when I'm alone, I think about that night at Romano's and how different things could have been if Emma hadn't recognized Catherine, if she hadn't found the courage to intervene, if I hadn't had the presence of mind to switch those wine glasses. I would be dead now. My death attributed to natural causes, my estate divided between a grieving son and his caring wife. Catherine would have gotten away with murder once again, and she'd be out there somewhere, identifying her next victim. But that's not what happened. Instead, a young woman's love for her grandmother became my salvation, and my survival became a beacon of hope for other families facing similar threats. The most important lesson I've learned is this: evil often wears a charming face and speaks in soothing tones. It presents itself as help when you're vulnerable, as love when you're lonely, as care when you're afraid. But there are always signs if you know how to look for them. The two convenient explanations, the gradual isolation from friends and family, the subtle undermining of your confidence and judgment. The medications that appear without clear medical justification, the financial documents that need updating for your own good. Trust your instincts. Question convenient help from unexpected sources. And never, ever let anyone convince you that your legitimate concerns are just symptoms of aging or confusion. Your life may depend on it. I am Margaret Davidson. I survived a calculated attempt on my life by someone I trusted completely. I'm here to tell my story not as a victim, but as a survivor who refused to be silenced. And every morning that I wake up healthy, clear-headed, and in control of my own life is a victory over those who thought they could destroy me. If my story can help even one person recognize the signs of elder abuse, if it can give even one family the tools to protect their vulnerable loved ones, then everything I went through will have been worth it. Stay vigilant. Stay strong, and never underestimate the power of an unexpected ally who refuses to stand by and watch evil triumph. Your life is worth fighting for, and there are people out there who will fight for it alongside you, sometimes in ways you'd never expect, from places you'd never imagine. Thank you for listening to my story. Please share it with anyone who might need to hear it, and remember, you're stronger than you know, braver than you feel, and more loved than those who would hurt you want you to believe. Did you enjoy my story? Which city are you listening from? Let's connect in the comments. If this story resonated with you, please show your support so I can continue sharing these important tales of survival and justice. I look forward to reading your thoughts and experiences. Stay safe, stay vigilant, and remember, sometimes salvation comes from the most unexpected places.